There is a truth almost no one talks about, a truth hidden in ancient writings, near-death testimonies, and spiritual traditions across centuries. Not every soul wants to return. Not every soul chooses another life. Some souls refuse reincarnation out of exhaustion, out of deep pain, or for reasons so profound that the human mind can barely grasp them. And yet, this refusal is rarely spoken of. It challenges everything we think we know about death, karma, and destiny. Death does not begin with darkness. According to countless near-death researchers and experiencers, it begins with clarity, a sudden widening of awareness, a calm detachment from the body, a knowing that feels more real than anything experienced in life. And within this clarity, a question quietly emerges, not asked by gods, not imposed by judgment, but felt from within. Do I want to return? What happens when the answer is no? Is the soul punished, delayed, forced back into another life? Or does something entirely different occur? Something far more compassionate, far more free than we were ever taught to believe. This video explores the forbidden question, the moments after death when choice appears, the souls who pause, the souls who rest, and the deeper truth behind refusal, freedom, and return. Before we begin, ask yourself honestly, do you believe a soul can choose whether to be reborn? Hold that question gently. You may remember more than you expect. According to near-death researchers, the first seconds after cardiac arrest are not marked by chaos or darkness, but by an unexpected clarity. When the heart stops, something else seems to begin. Consciousness does not collapse. It expands. Again and again, across cultures, beliefs, and medical settings, people report the same initial shift. Awareness suddenly widens beyond the limits of the body. There is no panic, no confusion. Instead, a calm detachment arises, accompanied by a strange but unmistakable certainty. I am still here. Researchers such as Pim van Lommel, Bruce Grayson, and others describe this moment as a rapid transition from bodily identity to pure awareness. The senses no longer feel localized. Perception becomes panoramic. Many experiencers report that thoughts no longer appear as inner dialogue, but as direct knowing. There is nothing to figure out, nothing to analyze. Understanding arrives whole, and within that understanding comes a realization that feels both simple and profound. I am not the body. This recognition does not feel philosophical. It feels factual. People often describe it as more real than waking life. The body is seen, sometimes from above, sometimes from a distance, but without fear, attachment, or urgency. The body appears neutral, almost like a garment that has been taken off. Some describe a deep relief, as if a constant pressure has suddenly dissolved. Pain is gone, effort is gone. Time itself seems to loosen its grip. In this expanded state, awareness does not drift aimlessly. It stabilizes, and it is here that many spiritual traditions locate what is often called the decision point. This is not a dramatic moment. There is no voice announcing a choice, no tribunal, no command. It is subtle, quiet, and deeply personal. A pause, a stillness, a space in which the soul is no longer distracted by survival, identity, or memory. A space in which it can finally perceive itself clearly. Ancient teachings describe this threshold in different ways. In Tibetan traditions, it is a transitional state, neither life nor afterlife, neither form nor formlessness. In Christian mysticism, it is described as a moment of naked awareness before God, where the soul stands without defense or mask. In modern near-death research, it appears as a brief but decisive interval in which consciousness recognizes its continuity beyond death. What unites these perspectives is not theology, but structure. The soul is not pushed forward, it is not pulled backward. It hovers in a state of presence where nothing is demanded. This is not heaven. It is not earth. It is a between space, a field of awareness where the soul is fully itself for the first time since birth. Here, identity changes. The roles of life fall away. Names, professions, wounds, and expectations dissolve. What remains is not emptiness, but essence, a sense of being that feels older than the last lifetime and larger than any single story. Many experiencers report that this is the first moment they feel completely honest with themselves. There is no need to perform, no need to justify, nothing to protect. And within this honesty, something begins to form, not as a thought, but as a direction, a gentle orientation of awareness. Some describe it as a pull, others as a question, others simply as a knowing that something is about to be understood. This is the threshold at which the idea of choice first appears, not as a decision yet, but as a possibility. Importantly, this moment is not rushed. There is no urgency. Time, as it was known in life, does not operate here. Seconds and eternities feel indistinguishable. The soul is allowed to settle into its own awareness. And it is precisely this settling that makes choice possible at all, without fear, without pressure, without external influence. Many people assume that decisions after death must be imposed by higher forces, but near-death accounts suggest the opposite. The first experience after death is not judgment, but recognition. Recognition of continuity, recognition of identity beyond form, recognition that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but something that uses the brain temporarily. This recognition changes everything, because once the soul knows it is not the body, it also knows it is not bound by the body's timeline limitations or expectations. It becomes capable of perceiving life as a chapter, not a totality. And it is from this perspective that the deeper questions can emerge, questions that are impossible to ask while embodied. The moment after death is therefore not an ending. It is a clearing, a return to clarity, a reorientation into truth. It is the moment when awareness becomes whole again, unfragmented by survival or identity. And it is within this wholeness that the path forward begins to reveal itself, not yet as action, but as inner readiness. Before any soul returns, before any soul refuses, before any further experience unfolds, there is this pause, this space, this quiet re-entry into itself, a moment where nothing is required and everything is possible. This is where choice is born. After the initial moment of clarity and detachment, many near-death experiencers describe a second phase that follows almost naturally: the life review. This phase has often been misunderstood as judgment, as a cosmic evaluation of right and wrong. But across cultures and testimonies, one thing becomes clear: the life review is not about punishment. It is about understanding. Those who undergo it consistently report that no external authority condemns or rewards them. There is no court, no accusation, no shame imposed from outside. Instead, the soul seems to enter a state of total transparency, where life is re-experienced not through memory, but through direct awareness. Events are not watched like scenes in a film. They are felt. In this review, the soul does not only recall what it did, it feels what others felt. Every word spoken, every action taken, every silence that mattered is perceived from multiple perspectives at once. The joy one gave is felt as joy. The pain one caused is felt as pain, not as guilt but as resonance. This is why many experiencers describe the review as overwhelming and gentle at the same time. There is no blame, but there is absolute honesty. What makes this possible is the absence of ego. The defensive structures that shape human identity simply do not operate here. Fear dissolves. Justification disappears. The soul does not argue with itself. It sees clearly, without distortion. And in that clarity, compassion often arises not only for others but for oneself. Many report a deep sense of forgiveness, especially toward the person they once were. This is also the moment when two levels of identity meet, the conscious self and the higher self. The conscious self is the part shaped by the human life, by experiences, wounds, beliefs, and survival patterns. It knows effort, loss, regret, and longing. The higher self, by contrast, is the timeless aspect of being. It holds the broader context. It understands why certain paths were chosen, why certain relationships existed, and why certain challenges appeared. During the life review, these two aspects do not argue. They integrate. The higher self does not criticize the human self. It illuminates it. Many experiencers describe this meeting as being gently remembered by something greater within themselves. A sense of recognition arises. This life was one expression, not the whole of who I am. From this integrated perspective, life is no longer seen as success or failure. It is seen as experience. Even painful chapters are understood as meaningful, not because suffering is required, but because it reveals something that could not be learned otherwise. This understanding does not erase pain, but it transforms it. Suffering becomes intelligible, loss becomes contextual, and with this understanding, a new kind of peace emerges. It is here, in the depth of this clarity, that the central question arises, not as a demand, but as an inner inquiry. Am I complete, or do I want to return? This question is not answered with words. It is felt as a state of being. Some souls sense a fullness, a quiet satisfaction, even if the human life was messy or unresolved on the surface. Others feel an openness, a recognition that something remains unfinished, not in a sense of obligation, but in a sense of curiosity, love, or growth. Importantly, this question is not binary in the way human decisions are. It is not a forced choice between two doors. It is an assessment of inner readiness. Completion does not mean perfection, it means coherence, a sense that what needed to be lived, understood, or expressed in that lifetime has reached a natural pause. For some souls, the life review brings a feeling of deep rest, a sense that nothing more needs to be proven. For others, it awakens a subtle pull toward further experience, toward reconnection, toward a different expression of being. Neither response is considered better or worse. There is no hierarchy of souls, only different rhythms of development. Near-death research and regression studies consistently show that this process is not rushed. The soul is not pressured to decide. There is no countdown. The review unfolds in a space where time does not constrain reflection. Understanding arises fully before any movement forward occurs. This is why the life review is so central. It creates the conditions for genuine freedom, a decision made without fear, without confusion, without external expectation. Only when the soul has seen itself clearly can it sense whether it wishes to continue through embodiment or rest, heal, and remain in a different mode of existence. The question of completion is therefore not about obligation. It is about alignment, about whether the soul feels internally finished with this particular chapter or quietly drawn toward another. And whatever the answer may be, it emerges from clarity, not from force. After the life review, not every soul feels ready to continue. Contrary to popular belief, refusal is not rare, nor is it rebellious. Many souls say no to reincarnation for reasons that are deeply human, compassionate, and understandable. The most common of these reasons is exhaustion, not physical exhaustion, but a profound fatigue of consciousness. Some lives are dense. They demand constant adaptation, resilience, and emotional endurance. When a life has been shaped by prolonged struggle, trauma, or inner conflict, the soul may emerge from it depleted. Near-death and regression accounts repeatedly describe souls arriving on the other side, not in anger, but in weariness. They do not feel judged or condemned. They feel overwhelmed. This exhaustion is often intensified when a death was sudden or traumatic. Teachings from the Tibetan Bardo describe a threshold known as the state of exhaustion, a phase in which the soul has been torn too quickly from the body. Accidents, violence, war, medical trauma, and sudden loss can sever the connection between body and consciousness without preparation. There is no time to integrate the transition. Awareness arrives abruptly, flooded by contrast. Souls who cross in this way often describe the transition as too loud, too sharp, too fast. The shift from the density of physical life to the clarity of the non-physical can feel disorienting. In such cases, the soul does not reject life itself. It rejects immediacy. It needs stillness before any further movement can occur. Another powerful reason some souls say no is shame, not imposed shame but self-recognition. During the life review, certain souls feel the weight of unresolved patterns. They see how fear shaped choices, how pain repeated itself, how opportunities for love or truth were missed. This does not lead to punishment, but it can lead to self-withdrawal. Some souls express a feeling of being unready to try again. They fear repeating the same wounds. They fear returning without having healed what still hurts. Importantly, these souls are not condemned. Regression research consistently shows that they are met with understanding, not pressure. The spiritual environment they enter does not function as a system of reward and penalty. It responds to inner state, not to external rules. Overwhelm is met with care. Fear is met with patience. For many souls, the refusal to reincarnate is not permanent. It is a pause, a necessary suspension of forward movement to allow integration. In Tibetan traditions, this is recognized as a legitimate phase. No soul is pushed through the cycle before it has regained balance. Rest is considered a form of wisdom. During this phase, souls often enter what are described as healing spaces. These are not locations in the physical sense, but states of supportive presence. Some experiencers describe them as fields of light, others as being surrounded by a soft, stabilizing awareness. The function is always the same, to allow the nervous system of consciousness to settle. Soul families play a central role here. Many accounts describe the presence of familiar beings, not necessarily human relatives, but companions known across lifetimes. These presences do not advise or instruct. They offer resonance. Their familiarity reminds the soul of continuity, of belonging, of safety beyond performance. Within this environment, the soul is not required to decide anything. There is no schedule for return. There is no expectation to progress. The right to rest is fully honored. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the after-death state. Growth does not always mean movement. Sometimes growth requires stillness. Unfinished pain is another reason souls hesitate. Some wounds cannot be resolved within a single lifetime. Abuse, betrayal, loss of children, or prolonged helplessness can leave imprints that do not immediately dissolve after death. These imprints are not punished, they are addressed. Healing in non-physical states occurs through gradual reintegration, not through confrontation. Souls are given the space to process their experience without identity pressure, without labels, without roles. Over time, intensity softens. Pain becomes information rather than charge. Memory becomes understanding. This process can take what humans would call a long time, decades, centuries, or longer. But time, as we know it, does not apply. What matters is readiness, not duration. The refusal to return is therefore not an end. It is an act of self-care at a cosmic level, a recognition that healing must come before further experience. In a system built on awareness rather than coercion, such a choice is respected completely. Some souls will eventually feel a renewed curiosity. Others will remain in rest for extended periods. Both are valid expressions of consciousness. To say no is not to fail. It is to listen. When a soul chooses not to return to physical life, it does not disappear, fall away, or become lost. It enters a state that many spiritual traditions and regression researchers describe as a resting plane, a realm beyond time, beyond identity, and beyond obligation. This plane is not a destination in the human sense. It is a condition of being, a field of awareness where nothing is required and nothing is missing. In this state, experience gives way to presence. The soul is no longer focused on learning through contrast, effort, or challenge. It is not gathering lessons. It is integrating what has already been lived. Awareness becomes simple, clear, and expansive. Many describe it as being rather than becoming, not doing, but existing. This resting plane exists outside the structures that define human life. There is no past to revisit, no future to anticipate. Identity loosens. The story of the last life is remembered, but it no longer defines the soul's sense of self. The I that struggled, hoped, failed, and endured is gently set aside. What remains is essence, a quiet, stable awareness that does not need to prove itself. For some souls, this state is brief. For others, it lasts what we would call decades or centuries. But duration here is not measured by clocks. It is measured by readiness. A soul remains in this plane as long as integration is unfolding. There is no pressure to move on, no expectation to evolve faster. Consciousness unfolds at its own rhythm. Within this resting plane, different modes of restoration occur. One of the most frequently described is cocooning. Souls report being enveloped by a kind of energetic shelter, not a barrier, but a support. This cocoon does not isolate. It stabilizes. It allows fragments of experience to settle and rejoin. Trauma softens. Emotional charge dissipates. Awareness regains coherence. These healing fields are not places of intervention. Nothing is fixed or corrected. Healing happens through resonance, through being held in a frequency where wholeness is remembered naturally. Many souls describe a gradual return of inner light, not imposed from outside but emerging from within as tension releases. Alongside these healing states, some souls enter what are often called learning halls or fields of understanding. These are not classrooms in the human sense. No one teaches, no one instructs. Knowledge is absorbed directly as insight. The soul becomes aware of patterns, connections, and meanings that were invisible during embodied life. Pain is understood without being relived. Events are seen within a wider tapestry. This learning is not mandatory. Souls who need only rest may bypass it entirely. Others drift in and out of these fields naturally, drawn by curiosity rather than obligation. Understanding deepens without effort. There is no test to pass, no lesson to complete. Development continues here, but it does not resemble progress as humans understand it. There are no milestones, no achievements. Growth occurs as an expansion of clarity, as a softening of contraction, as an increased ability to hold complexity without distress. One of the most profound aspects of this plane is the absence of pressure. There is no sense that time is being wasted, no fear of falling behind. Consciousness is not measured against an ideal. It simply unfolds. This is why some souls remain in this state for very long periods, not because they are avoiding life, but because they are recalibrating. The soul family often remains close during this phase. Familiar presences are sensed, sometimes continuously, sometimes intermittently. These connections are not conversations. They are shared states, a knowing of mutual presence, support without intrusion. Importantly, no soul is ever forced to leave this resting plane. Return to embodiment only becomes relevant when something shifts internally, when awareness naturally begins to orient outward again, when curiosity stirs, when the desire to experience contrast, connection, or expression reawakens. Until then, rest is not considered stagnation. It is honored as a vital phase of the soul's larger movement. In traditions that acknowledge cyclical existence, this pause is seen as necessary. Consciousness cannot expand endlessly without integration. Silence is as essential as sound. This is why development here is described as growth without time. There is no linear sequence, no before and after. Transformation occurs as sudden insight or gradual easing, a deepening of presence rather than an accumulation of experience. The resting plane is therefore not an escape from life. It is part of life's greater rhythm, a breath between movements, a gathering of awareness before the next expression. When souls do not return immediately, they are not choosing absence, they are choosing balance, and in a universe shaped by consciousness rather than force, that choice is fully respected. At the heart of nearly every spiritual tradition, near-death account and regression study lies a simple but radical truth. No soul is ever forced to reincarnate. The idea of compulsory return, of being pushed back into life by cosmic law or karmic punishment, does not align with what souls themselves describe when consciousness is free of fear and identity. Instead, what appears again and again is freedom, quiet, unquestioned, absolute. Reincarnation is not a command. It is an invitation, not issued from outside, but arising from within. No authority demands it. No tribunal enforces it. The soul moves forward only when something inside it begins to stir again. Not urgency, not obligation, but readiness. This readiness does not arrive suddenly. It unfolds. Often after long periods of rest, healing, and integration, awareness begins to change its orientation. The resting plane no longer feels complete in itself. A subtle curiosity emerges. A gentle pull toward experience returns. Not because something is missing, but because something is ripening. Love plays a central role in this process. Not romantic love, but the deep resonance that exists between souls who have evolved together across many lifetimes. These connections do not bind or trap, they attract. In regression research, souls often describe sensing the movement of others in their soul group. When one becomes ready to return, its shift in awareness is felt by the others, not as pressure but as recognition. A familiar tone, a shared memory. Unfinished connections also contribute. These are not debts or obligations, they are open threads of meaning. Relationships that still carry potential for understanding. Experiences that want to be lived from a different level of awareness. The pull toward return often comes not from fear of incompletion, but from love's desire to express itself more fully. Inner maturity is another key factor. Readiness is not about courage or strength in the human sense. It is about coherence. The soul begins to sense that it can enter form again without losing itself, that it can experience density without forgetting its essence. This confidence does not come from effort. It arises naturally when healing has done its work. The moment of return is almost always described as quiet. There is no announcement, no drama. Just a simple, clear realization, I am ready. This readiness is not intellectual. It is felt as alignment, as a gentle yes that carries no resistance. Souls describe it as a warmth, a clarity, or a soft forward movement of awareness. Importantly, this yes is reversible. Even after readiness appears, there is no immediate action. The soul is free to pause again. Freedom is never withdrawn. Choice remains intact at every stage. This understanding reframes the idea of not returning. Refusal is not failure. It is not an ending. It is a phase of becoming. Consciousness moves in cycles of expansion and integration. Action and rest, expression and silence, embodiment and return to presence. Some souls will incarnate many times, others fewer. Some will take long pauses between lives, others will move more quickly. There is no correct rhythm. There is only the rhythm that fits the soul's state of awareness. What all paths share is continuity. Consciousness does not vanish when it rests. It does not regress when it pauses. It deepens, it clarifies, it gathers itself. Eventually, for most souls, the call returns, not as obligation, but as invitation. A sense that something new wants to be explored. A relationship wants to be met again. A quality of being wants to be expressed through form. And when that moment comes, it is not driven by fear of stagnation or promise of reward. It is driven by love's movement toward experience. The soul does not say, "I must return." It says, "I want to." And in that wanting, freedom remains intact. Not returning is never the end of the journey. It is simply a pause between movements, a breath held in awareness, a phase in which becoming continues quietly, invisibly, until the next expression is ready to unfold. This is the deeper truth behind death, rest, and return. A universe shaped not by force but by freedom, a path guided not by command but by inner resonance. And in that freedom, every soul finds its own moment to move forward again. There is one question that often lingers quietly after stories like these are told, a sentence that does not come from the mind, but from somewhere deeper. I don't want to come back. If you have ever felt this, even fleetingly, it does not mean something is wrong with you. It does not mean rejection of life. It may mean memory or exhaustion, or a part of you recognizing a truth that words cannot easily hold. For some, this feeling arises from pain, from lives that ask too much, from losses that cut too deeply, from journeys that felt unbearably heavy. For others, it appears without sadness, almost gently, like a knowing that has no story attached to it. The question is not whether the feeling is right or wrong. The question is what it is asking you to remember. This video is not here to give final answers. It is here to open a space where reflection is allowed, where silence can speak, where your own inner knowing is respected. If this subject touched something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your words may help someone else feel less alone in their questions. And if you want to continue exploring these deeper layers of existence together, stay connected. We are not here to escape life. We are here to understand it. Spirit to spirit. Your Zeitgeist.